Welcome back to TLDR's daily briefing for Thursday the 17th of April 2025. In today's episode, we cover France-US talks on Ukraine, the UK Supreme Court ruling on sex and gender identity, and shares jumping in two US firms before the appointment of Donald Trump's sons. But first, scientists find compelling evidence of life beyond Earth. It was revealed this morning that a study from Cambridge University has suggested that extraterrestrial life may exist on a planet a mere 124 light-years away. The exoplanet K2-18b, which is around 2.6 times the size of Earth and is in the Goldilocks zone of the star, has large quantities of dimethyl sulfide in its atmosphere. This is a chemical only produced by living organisms, such as phytoplankton. In fact, the quantities of this dimethyl sulfide in the atmosphere are massive. The report itself suggests that, as a result of this, they think the planet has about 20 times the biological activity as on Earth. It's also worth mentioning that when the planet was first spotted, scientists identified methane and carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. While these can be signs of life too, they can also be produced by other natural processes like volcanic activity. Explaining this further, Professor Niku Madhusudan from Cambridge's Institute of Astronomy said there is no mechanism that can explain what we're seeing, the presence of dimethyl sulfide, without life. Given everything we know about this planet, a world with an ocean that's teeming with life is the scenario that best fits the data we have. What we are seeing right now are the first hints of an alien world that is possibly inhabited, and this is a revolutionary moment. It's most likely that the life forms on the planet resemble that of phytoplankton on Earth, and there's a chance that, as this phytoplankton can act as an abundant food supply, larger life forms, such as filter-feeding shrimp and flying fish, could also exist. Right now, this seems to be one of the most significant discoveries in the quest to find extraterrestrial life. If scientists want more firm answers though, they might need to wait for some new equipment. That's because whilst the tool used to find most of this data, the James Webb Space Telescope, has clearly been quite successful in this instance, it certainly does have its limitations. For instance, it can't detect faraway planets that are as small as ours, or those that are close to parent stars because of the glare. Because of this, NASA is planning the Habitable Worlds Observatory, which is scheduled for completion in the 2030s, and will have technology that will allow it to spot and sample planets like ours. Perhaps this will be the next step in finding alien life. You're listening to TLDR's Daily Briefing. If you want more explainers on what's happening in the world, then you should check out TLDR's other channels. Today, we released videos on whether the US could join the Commonwealth, and whether Trump could put tariffs on money. You can find those videos linked in the description or show notes for this episode, or by searching for TLDR on YouTube or Nebula. French President Emmanuel Macron has today met with US Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff in Paris to discuss Ukraine. On Thursday afternoon, Macron and France's Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot greeted the American officials in the Élysée Palace, just hours after a Ukrainian delegation met separately with British, German, and French representatives. Meanwhile, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni is in Washington, D.C., meeting with US President Donald Trump. At the time of writing, no details of the talks have yet been published. Commenting on the talks, Russia has repeated its argument that Europe is focused on continuing the war, with the Kremlin's top economic negotiator claiming that some countries were trying to derail Moscow's closer relationship with the US. Next up, the UK Supreme Court has ruled that the definition of a woman is based on biological sex under equalities law. The ruling means that public and private bodies across Scotland, England, and Wales will be subject to new guidance on sex-based rights based on biological sex, with implications for trans people's access to spaces like changing rooms, hospital wards, and women's sport. The issue goes back to 2018, when the Scottish Parliament passed a bill designed to ensure gender balance on public sector boards, including trans women with gender recognition certificates, or GRCs, in the female category. But the Anti-Trans Campaign Group for Women Scotland, or FWS, challenged the decision several times in the Scottish courts, losing multiple cases, before being allowed to appeal at the Supreme Court in London, backed by a £70,000 donation from author J.K. Rowling. Then on Wednesday, having heard the appeal in November 2024, the 5 judges ruled that the definition of sex as used in the 2010 Equality Act is binary and decided by biology, meaning that someone who is not assigned female at birth but has changed their sex legally through a gender recognition certificate can no longer access the same legal protections as women. While FRS celebrated the ruling as a victory for women, trans rights groups have expressed concerns about how it could impact trans people's safety. Reading the verdict, Lord Hodge recognised that trans people are a vulnerable and often harassed minority who struggle against discrimination and prejudice. He also added that there are other protections against direct and indirect discrimination and harassment, which would continue to protect trans people. Ultimately, the court's decision was based on the argument that it would be problematic to effectively divide trans people between two different protected characteristics depending on whether or not they held a GRC. Shares in two little-known New York-based firms rose weeks before the announcement that at least one of Donald Trump's sons would be appointed to their advisory boards, according to Financial Times analysis, raising concerns about possible conflicts of interest. On November the 27th, a drone maker called Unusual Machines disclosed the appointment of Trump's son Donald Trump Jr. as an advisor. However, in the 4 weeks before the disclosure, shares in the firm had almost tripled. Similarly, on February the 11th, filings published by a securities and fintech firm called Dominari Holdings revealed the appointments of Trump Jr. and another of Trump's sons, Eric Trump, to its advisory board. But in the 6 weeks prior to the revelation, shares in the company had soared by 580%. In both cases, regulatory experts say the activity was clearly unusual, as it didn't appear to be linked to earnings reports or other announcements in the period. Bill Singer, a lawyer and former regulatory attorney at the New York Stock Exchange, told the FT, "The dramatic movement before the equally dramatic announcement suggests that this was not a hermetically sealed event." That's all for today. It's now the Easter bank holiday weekend in the UK, so we'll be back with more daily briefing on Tuesday. In the meantime, you can check out the latest episode of our podcast, The World Leader Leaderboard, where we discuss which heads of government are doing well and who's doing badly every week. We'll also be releasing an episode of our UK politics podcast, Starmageddon, on Friday, so keep an eye out for that, plus our main videos over the weekend. This was a TLDR news production hosted by Georgina Findlay, written by Ben Blissett and Georgina Findlay, and produced by Scarlett Watchorn. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back again next Tuesday.